Welcome to the Heads Together podcast. Look, you can see me. How exciting is this? You're used to just my voice between your ears, and now you can actually see me. Huh? How fun. Oh, that reminds me of, I can't remember the actress, on Miranda. What fun. I'm Jill Mokes. I am the host of the Heads Together podcast, and I am so glad you're here with me today. Otherwise, talking into this green dot just is much less satisfying. Anyway, today I want to talk about a super important topic. It's actually something that I've been talking about really since the beginning of this month. I know we're only on today it's the 14th of January. It'll be just after that when this episode is released. I've been talking a lot already this year about playing bigger, about really going all in. And what I want to talk to you about today is probably going to make you squirm a little bit, if I'm honest. It is. But it's kind of in a good way because it needs to so that you can address it, right? So we're talking today about how are you censoring yourself when you create content and what happens when you do? What effect does it have? And what happens when you go the opposite way and stop censoring yourself, right? Okay, let's dive into the episode. So if your content feels safe, if it feels watered down, like you're hiding behind a little bit of generic coach speak, I see a lot of coaches who love themselves a bit of coach speak. It is time to change all of that because, playing safe does not build connection. And I am putting a stake in the ground this year and I am sharing with you something really important right now. Peel them back. This year, more than any other year, I believe, is going to be a year where connection trumps everything. There is going to be no amount of AI generated copy, no amount of sort of playing through generic, posting on social media, but just ticking the boxes. None of that is going to work this year. This year is going to be completely different because ChatGPT, all of the different AI options that we have now have taken hold. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I love me a bit of brainstorming with ChatGPT. It's really good for that. But if you want to actually build connection, you're going to have to step outside of generic, watered down content. And you're going to have to start uncensoring yourself. You're going to have to start getting radically authentic. This is the year for it. And the good news is it means that we have a really obvious, direct way to differentiate ourselves. And all it asks for is for us, to be truly authentic. I think that's quite exciting. I think that levels the playing field, actually. And it means that coaches who are passionate about their coaching niche and are recognized authorities in their thing, have thought leadership around their thing, they are going to get this chance to stand out like never before because the people who are just good marketers are not going to cut it. So that's exciting. So when we censor ourselves, when we play it safe, when we play small, when we try and blend in, like I say, it doesn't build connection. In fact, what it does is it makes you invisible. So in this episode, I want to really unpack why we hold ourselves back. Why do we do that if on some levels we know that being generic is a fast track to being irrelevant? Why do we still do it? And I want to unpack what being unapologetically authentic can do for your business. So stick around because I'm going to share some very bold, very actionable advice to help you stand up, stand out, really make your mark so that the people out there who need what you do can find you, can hear you, can see you. It's time. So why do we censor ourselves? I think the biggest one is the fear of judgment, right? I mean, let's face it, nobody actually likes feeling exposed. It's an uncomfortable feeling. And I think for many of us, the fear of someone disagreeing with us or criticizing us, particularly if it's done publicly, that can paralyze us, right? But you know what? If you are trying to avoid criticism all the time, then you are also avoiding connection. And we've just talked about how this year of all years is going to be the year that connection is a non-negotiable. You are going to have to build genuine relationships. If you are in a coaching business where you are looking to attract high ticket, high value coaching clients, you are going to have to focus on connection and building relationships. So trying to avoid criticism and therefore showing up in a really generic, bland way for fear of standing out is not going to cut it, right? And holding back from saying what you really mean because you're afraid of maybe losing followers or of ruffling a few feathers, it isn't going to work. Because you need to remember, people respect honesty. People respect honesty, even if they don't always agree with it, right? So I want you to practice saying what you really think, daring to do it, daring to say something that, God forbid, someone might not agree with, right? There are going to be some of you watching now who are not going to agree with what I'm talking about right now. They're going to be like, what are you talking about, Jill? Like, connection has always mattered. Why are you trying to frame it like it's some new thing? There's always people who do that. And that's okay. They can have that opinion. But I'm not afraid to share my opinion. No one has to agree, but it's my honest opinion. And I'm absolutely not going to censor myself. The next thing that kind of holds us back from really showing up as the raw version of ourselves is this perfectionism, right? And there's this big lie that perfectionism tells you, and that is that you have to have it all figured out before you share anything. Honestly, this is a real biggie. Perfect content is forgettable content. If it is so sleek, polished, it's forgettable most of the time. It's probably not delivered like this, with my hands waving all around the place and my imperfect hair. That's not how perfect content is presented. But perfect content is forgettable content, right? Authenticity beats polished content every single time. People actually want to see the rough edges because that's where they find themselves in your story. The next one, I think, is the imposter syndrome, our old favorite, imposter syndrome. Don't we just love it? So this is who am I to say this? Who am I to be this bold? And that's the question that keeps us quiet. It shushes us. But I actually want to flip it. Who are you not to say it? Your perspective is unique, and that is what makes it valuable. And that is what makes it essential that you share, because there will be people out there who need to hear your way of saying it, right? No one else can share your insights the way you do. think another thing that stops us, and this is less about censoring and more about trying to, it's probably a bit of the perfectionism coming back in, but it's where we mimic others. It's where we try and copy exactly what works for someone else. But the thing is, that by its very nature is trying to blend in. And you're not here to blend in. You're here because you have a really impactful message to share with the people who need to hear it. So honestly, if your content could just be swapped for someone else's and no one would notice, you are holding back way too much, right? So what does generic content look like? It looks like playing safe. It looks like avoiding sharing an opinion. It's like skirting around the big ideas and settling for the stuff that's already been said before, that you already know is going to land okay, right? That is not thought leadership. That is wallpaper. That is what generic content looks like. People don't notice it. It's just there. It's just there in the noise. People don't notice it. I think it also looks like trying to appeal to everyone. I don't know how many times I talk about this, and I'm not going to apologize for it. This is another one of the time, and I'm not going to apologize for that. When you try and appeal to everyone, the less anyone cares, right? Because your audience, the people, the clients that you can serve the best, you know my definition of an ideal client. It's the clients who you love to work with, for whom you get the best results, and who have the budget to pay you. That's an ideal client right there. Those people do not need you to be everything. They just need you to be you. And if your content feels like it could have been written by a bloody robot, then it's really time to inject some humanity back into it, some personality. I, I know I've already said this on this episode, but people are not looking for perfect words. They're not looking for a perfect sound or a perfect vision. There are some minimum requirements for all of those things, right? But they're not looking for perfection. They're looking for a voice they can trust and relate to. And that related to, that is connection. That's what they're looking for. So what would radically authentic content look like? What would it sound like? I think it's about speaking boldly. And that means saying the thing you're nervous to say. You know the Susan Jefferson book, I think, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. I'm always quoting that book. Such a good book. If you haven't read it yet, it's like an OG book. It's like, I don't know if it's probably like the 80s or the early 90s it came out. Feel the fear and do it anyway, right? Say the thing you're nervous to say, even though you're nervous to say it, because your people, the people who you want to build deep connection with, meaningful connection, those people will respect that honesty. And the wrong ones, they can get their coat and they can keep walking, right? The wrong people we don't need to care about what they think of our content. And the truth is, the wrong people probably won't think anything about it. They probably won't notice it. They probably just will keep walking anyway, because it's not speaking to them. And that's okay. Sometimes we deliberately create content to repel the wrong people. And that is a really bold move, but it's really valuable. Actually creating content that the wrong people are going to be put off by, but the right people are going to be like, whoa, that's the thing. That's the thing we needed to hear. Right? And I think this isn't about copying someone else. It's about letting your true personality shine through. And that might be that you are a deeply thoughtful person and you're very reflective, not like me. So, I'm not apologizing for that, but I'm just saying that's not who I am. I have probably spent a lot of time over the years wishing that I was a little bit more deep and reflective. That's not who I am. So if I try and create content from that perspective, I've tried to do it before and it's not good. It doesn't come across like me. But if that is who you genuinely are, you're going to create incredible content if you allow that to shine through, right? Maybe you're a refreshingly direct person. Let that come out. Your voice is your signature, right? And you get to use it every time you show up. The way you speak, the way you write, the way you show up on camera, all of those things need to be a true reflection of who you are. Because you know what? When someone signs up to work with you, they want the you that they've signed up to work with to be the same you that they've been experiencing as they've got to know you online. They have an expectation already. So you better have been showing up as the real you. Because if you haven't, they're going to know. They're going to know and they're going to be disappointed because the reason they raised their hand to work with you is because you were the person that they wanted. So let it be the real you. That will attract the right client. I think really good, uncensored content is when we allow ourselves to be a bit vulnerable. And this isn't about always incredibly raw vulnerability. There's a saying, isn't there, that, share the scars, not the scabs. And I think that's a really, really sage advice. But people do want to see behind the curtain. They do really want to see the things that you've struggled with, that you're now out the other side of and can share insight on. But they want to see what those lessons are. And they want to see your process and they want transparency around how you do what you do. Right? And that does ask for you to be a bit vulnerable. It means, maybe things behind the scene aren't as polished. Maybe you've got this idea in your head that you need to pretend that you have a team of 10 people rather than it just being you doing everything behind the scenes. Hands up who hasn't invented an Emma from accounts to reply to chase people up for late payments. Right? I get it. There is a temptation to try and present yourself slightly differently. But actually coming back again to that real connection, hold back the curtain, let people see the reality of what you do, of everything that you represent and believe in. That's what will form that deep and meaningful connection. So, what can you do? What are the actions? I like to give you the actions. What are the actionable steps that you can do to start uncensoring yourself, to start showing up with a bit more courage and authenticity? Well, I think the first place to start is you need to identify where you're holding back, because quite often it will be around a particular topic that will have you kind of, I don't want to talk about that. So review your content, the content that you're creating each week, whether that's on a podcast or YouTube or your blog or your social media content, wherever you share stuff online to show potential clients a little bit of who you are as a coach, wherever you do that, review it and ask yourself, am I saying what I really want to say or am I softening it? And write down the topics or the opinions that you've been avoiding. because those are most likely the ones that need your voice the most. Okay? And the next thing I want you to do is to really make sure that you are crystal clear on your values and your voice. So, what do you stand for? What are the things that you are unwilling to compromise on? What do you hate? What do you love? What are the things that actually bring out of you a genuinely strong reaction? So, all of those things around that make up your personal brand. Get really clear on all of them and let it guide every single piece of content you create, because it needs to. Every piece of content needs to be informed by the real truth of what your personal brand is. So when we think about what are our values, well, what do they mean? Let's not have them as words on a piece of paper. If one of your values is kindness, well, what does that mean in terms of how you show up? What do you do that shows that you value kindness? And if you value kindness, what does that mean that you won't tolerate? That's where we need to be sharing. Okay? I challenge you to take a small step outside of your comfort zone this week. I want you to post something. I don't care where, don't care what it is, don't care how long it is, short it is, don't care about any of that. I just want you to take this one small step and post something really raw, real, or opinionated and see how it feels. See how it feels and let yourself feel it. So if it feels like you're super exposed and you're nervous and you don't even want to look at your phone to see if anyone's commented on it, allow yourself to feel that. Okay? Because you know what? It will never feel as bad the second time. So I'm not sure if that's comforting or not, but it's true. It will never feel as nerve-wracking as the first time that you put something remotely opinionated out there. The next thing I want you to do is to forget perfection. Focus on real every single time. Like typo or awkward sentence, it's not going to ruin your entire credibility. I tell you what, hiding behind a facade of someone you're not might. Isn't that interesting? The thing that we are more worried about, which is like making a mistake, is far less likely to affect our credibility than hiding or showing up as someone we're not. I think that's really interesting. And it's actually really positive because it gives you that flip of the script to see how important this is. And another thing you could do is to ask someone you really trust for some feedback. Now, I'm talking like a peer or maybe a mentor or even a friend. Ask them if what you're putting out feels authentic to who you are. Because sometimes an outside perspective can actually be really useful to see where you're holding back, because we can't always see it ourselves. I mean, I think like on a certain level, we kind of know. So chances are, if you do ask someone for feedback, they're probably going to tell you what you already think anyway. But it can be a good way to pick up on any blind spots that you don't know about too. And it's a bit like anything in business. We have to celebrate our progress. We have to, as business owners, like no one else really does it for us. So we have to celebrate our progress. So every time you hit publish on something that feels a little bit risky or a little bit outside of what you would normally write about or talk about, that's when you're growing. That is when you are developing as a thought leader, as an authority, as an expert in your thing. So celebrate every time. because it really matters. So when you stop censoring yourself, the bottom line is you will attract the right people. So for all of those people out there, and I do keyword research, and I know there are a hell of a lot of people out there who are Googling, how do I attract the right client? It's a question that I'm asked all the time. So my answer is, well, one of the things that contributes, it's not a single answer, but one of the things that contributes to it is you will attract the right clients when you stop censoring yourself, when you put out content or when you speak in a way that has people say, wow, finally, someone who actually gets me, someone who gets it, someone who's not afraid to put their hand up and say, oh, yeah, I've felt that in the past too. And here's what I learned from it. Or someone who isn't afraid to share some of the messy stuff, the realness of building a business, the realness of being a coach. Honestly, putting out authentic content, when you overcome that pull to censor yourself, when you master that and creating much more like authentic content becomes second nature to you, you're going to find content creation is like 1,000 times easier. It's so much easier. This is honestly a game changer. Hope you've enjoyed this and being able to see me as well. So if you are listening on the podcast, I'll put a little old link to the YouTube show underneath. And if you're watching me on YouTube, you can also listen to the podcast too, the Heads Together podcast, wherever you like listening to podcasts. Amazing. I don't know where this YouTube journey is going to go. I just got all inspired to create a video. I think it's because I found my old ring light, to be quite honest. I wish I could say it was a little more strategic than that. But I found this old ring light in my cupboard and I was like, oh my goodness, give that a go again. Anyway, it's been good to be here with you again. And I'll be back here, same time, same place, next week. Bye for now.